Mm.
All right. So we should be up and going. I'll do an audio test and then we'll get the show going. I have to,
Mm.
I have to delete that first one and go into this one. Hopefully, I didn't delete the wrong one. So it looks like it's on. Yeah, it's on and going on, sounding good on Twitch. It's working on Kick as well.
Mm.
I gotta hit refresh on YouTube. It's working on YouTube. D Live. I didn't sign into it, but I don't care about D Live anymore. It drives me nuts. Everybody else thinks that stuff is good, but it
Just think of all those poor little D-livers.
yeah, they just they don't care about me. Like, Svetlana is the only one who cares about me. She said that I needed to add other channel links to the description.
Yeah, I've mentioned that to you before.
Well, I mean those cool pictures that I got from Minds Gaming had the links in it. All I had to do is click on them
No,
down below.
actual text-based links, so
Well, I
not
mean,
image-based. Remember,
well,
accessibility.
let me finish. But I went in to test it, and I clicked it, and it took me to the Minds chat.
Okay.
I'm like, what the hell, dude? But yeah, I understand what you're saying, but I wanted to mention that fact because that's stupidity. You know what I mean? Like, why would it send me to the chat for mine?
Always check your URLs.
Well, I mean,
That's
I don't ever remember being on chat and like copying the URL so that I could put it in the. I don't even think I've ever opened a freaking chat for Live with Roger Hansen. Ever.
not the new Minds chat sessions.
Uh-uh. So let me see here. We are on episode 5, and this one's gonna be good. So usually I do an introduction and everything. With this one, well, I guess I could. I'll go ahead and do that, and we can get it going on that way. I did the audio check. We're running an hour and a half late, but that's because I'm a sick man.
How are you feeling? Any better?
I'm feeling better. I thought I was feeling a lot better last night, but I got to keep an eye on it. It's in the last phases of its life. You know what I mean? The cold. You know how they say with a cold, it has a last minute attempt to where it tries to spread. So it starts making it to where you cough everything up, and that's where I'm going through right now, where it's its last attempt to survive. It's weird how colds are like that. Like when it knows that it's in a dangerous environment, it'll literally like kick into self-preservation, and the only thing it wants to do is leave the body and transmit to somebody else. I find that really weird. I learned. You know how I learned that all that stuff? It was about cough drops.
Okay.
They explained to me how worthless cough drops are, and they went into the whole explanation on how a cold works, and how it mutates from one person to the other.
Mm.
Like the cold I have, if you catch it, the cold you get is going to be a completely different version.
Yeah. It's very suited to my own body.
Yeah. And then, like, whenever you fight it off with medicine and stuff,
Which
it,
I never do.
it
Paracetamol and what is it? The British Lucas A drink, which is
what,
just an energy drink.
well, the weird part is like, no matter what, and when it notices that your body's winning against it, the virus will literally go into it'll go into a form of self-preservation, and it'll know that it needs to escape. So instead of trying to freaking invade your body like it did it in the beginning, it starts thinking outward. It wants to spread to other people so that it can stay alive. Isn't that weird?
Really, I'm one of those people that will only have a cold once every 2 years or something. And
Unless
when I do get a cold, I seriously do.
unless it's like extremely hot outside and you're not used to the weather.
Mm, mm,
That happened recently with you. You
mm.
had that heat cold. You're lucky. Being honest, your body's not used to that kind of weather, and you know what I mean. So, getting a heat cold is, we call it hay fever here.
Well, it wasn't really hay fever. It was just the heat, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So here we go. I'll go ahead and do the introduction and get it started. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Roger's Realtime Talk Show event. Today we are joined with Mr. Mark Edworthy, the smartest man in England.
One of.
One of the smartest men in England. Next to John Locke, of course, who isn't alive, so he technically could be the smartest man in England.
No, I think I can think of a few people that are
No, be quiet.
somewhat
Nobody.
smarter than me.
Okay, be quiet. Stop it. Don't do that to yourself. Be a proud Englishman. Take accomplishment or a compliment. There we go. Now, before we get started, I want people to know too, I am sick as a dog. So if I say something inappropriate or out of touch, that's because I'm probably succumbing to my feverish.
It's a cold. It's not any. It's not a. Yeah, it's not.
Well, we're going to get into some of that today, believe it or not. And you're like, you're going to be thinking, well, how's that got anything to do with political history? But guess what, ladies and gentlemen, it has to do with political history. So we're moving forward, getting a lot closer to the more modern politics of what's taking place in Europe. And I want to remind people watching as well as you, Mark, because I know you kind of do that whenever we talk, because I bring it out in you, but we are talking about Europe. Okay. And when I say Europe, I'm leaving England out of it because we did England last year.
Some
Okay.
some of your
Yes.
notes could be related to the US as well.
Yeah. They kind of interblends, you know what I mean? But just kind of keep that in mind, because like I'm not trying to talk about like cool, great things that are going on in the United States. I'm actually bringing up information pertaining to Europe, So don't forget that. And I want to also let you know that I went back and I checked on our notes from last year, and you were correct when you said that radicalism, the term radicalism, became popular right after the Napoleonic Wars.
Hmm.
So that was when it became more dominant in England. I don't know about all of Europe. It could have been before the Napoleonic
The
War
French Revolution onwards, really.
for like France and all the other ones. But I know that like when we were discussing England, that's when it really became popular. And also um, last year, something the Whigs actually uh, they actually merged with the um, radicals and what's his faces the Peelites, and
Okay.
that is what created your guys's form of liberalism. I don't know if that's the same liberalism that we had in the United States. You know what I'm saying? But that was what created the Liberal Party in England.
What we would now call as in the UK the Liberal Democrats or Labour.
What I believe so. It was a while since we'd done that.
Yeah, yeah.
And English politics just really bores the shit out of me, dude.
I could make similar comments about US politics, to be
Um,
fair.
I, I had to put a little bit of I had to get a little bit of that rambunctious British attitude from you today. So now the first thing I want to get into is, or actually, I can make a list of the things that we're talking about. I actually made a list on chat. Now, what I want to discuss today is national identity. Then go into statecraft, necessity, and power. Then also national crisis or formation. From there, going from there, I want to also discuss exclusion. And this is where you guys are going to think, how does that have to do with political history? But it does. But chauvinism. And this is a term I have never heard before, but Revanchist. It's a hard word to say.
Yeah, I had to look it up just before we started this. That's why.
And then finally, eventually, I want to be able to discuss technocracy, because technocracy is something that goes all the way back to this is we hear that term all the time today, but I don't think people today really understand uh, the full implications of technocracy, especially when it comes to the term realist and realism. You know what I mean? Being a realist, or what is realism? I think that's going to pretty much be the nail in the coffin. I also want to say that even though I'm putting the notes out, that doesn't necessarily mean I agree with what these notes say. These are just notes that I collected on the information through time. You know what I'm saying? So if you get all upset and angry and everything, don't be calling me ugly words. You know what I mean?
Don't worry, don't worry. Only some of us will use the term far right occasionally. Hey, Roger.
Well, you won't really hear me say far right, left, or anything like that, because I know what that stuff actually means. This is actually going to explain what we're going through right now. Is actually going to explain some of the ridiculous stuff that is going on when it comes to people who are supposedly talking about politics today. Okay. You're going to understand it a little bit better. Maybe not a lot, but at least a little bit. You know what I mean? But for me, a lot of things that I hear in today's world makes a lot more sense because I actually went through and learned this stuff. You know, so when discussing national identity uh, in the context of realists and romanticists or romanticists, however you want to say it.
Hmm.
Um, we're referring to two contrasting intellectual and emotional approaches. All right. And these have both shaped how nations understand themselves, and also their origins and their purpose in history, basically. All right. Now, Romanticism sees the nation not just as a political or legal construct, but as a living, organic community that's bound together by shared uh, blood, language, folklore, and other mythical senses of destiny. All right. Um, it also believes that the nation is a soul, a spirit, something ancient, sacred, and lives in the hearts of its people. Okay. Now that would pertain to like stories, songs, traditions. They're seen as the expression of the true national character. Um, a distinct language is usually believed to carry the essence of the people's soul. You know what I mean? Now, the thing that really bugs me about this stuff is the term homeland. Okay, that's something that you find that comes out of Romanticism. Now, the homeland becomes hollowed ground, not just territory. You know what I mean? Um, now, I don't like the term homeland when it comes to this romantic point of view. You know what I mean? It does like we have homeland security here in the United States, and that really hit me wrong. I just don't like the term homeland being uh, uh, implemented in that sense, not here on American soil.
Okay, I can see the point as far as, let's say, 20th century social or extreme socialism is concerned.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No.
you go on both the left and right.
Right. Now, see, um, history, according to the Romanticists, is interpreted as a kind of divine unfolding of the nation's fate. It incorporates heroes, martyrs, um, and betrayals. They become moral and spiritual lessons in this kind of thinking. You know what I mean? Um, in
Both
this,
factual, or I was going to say both factual and fictional. When I was thinking of fiction, I was thinking of in the UK, St George, as an example.
exactly, and that's what we were talking about before. And then like George Washington and the cherry tree. You know what I mean? Um, and now, in this view, national identity is deeply emotional and it's symbolic. You know what I mean? Now, it's something that one feels, often tied to like nostalgia, uh, also like ancestry, a collective memory. That and it's more poetic than what it is precise, basically. So that's the whole thing with romanticism. Okay, when it comes to national identity, um, then you get to the realists. Okay, now them on the other hand, they tend to view national identity as a product or statecraft, necessity. You know, it's realists. They view national identity as like a product. You know what I mean? Usually it has to do with statecraft, necessity, and power. Now, the nation exists because uh, people within a territory require organization, defense, and stability. National identity may be useful, um, perhaps even necessary, but it's not sacred. You know what I mean? So when you're talking about national defense and you're talking about stability, you're talking about that. All you're talking about is is organization. You know what I mean? It has absolutely nothing to do with being sacred or nothing. They believe that nations are built by laws, armies, markets, diplomacy, and not fairy tales, basically. So that is something they're really big on. Um, Now, identity to them is also uh, defined by like legal status, shared political values, economic cooperation, things like that, rather than cultural or ethnicity. That's the way they they determine it. Um, Now, they also believe that nations should evolve with the times. Okay, clinging on to outdated myths is seen as dangerous or obstructive. So, out of all this, is any of this anything crossing your mind at the moment?
Um, I was just thinking about Shakespeare when you're talking about sort of myths and that sort of principle. Things like Richard III as an example.
Yeah.
Um, the famous Saint Crispin speech.
Yep.
Um, um, when it comes to sort of national identity on laws, I think that's just an issue that we have, but especially in the Britain, we are having an issue with at the moment because we've got a prime minister, we've got a government that believes in that seems to want to ignore national legislation, national laws, national cultural identity, and wishes to push into a much more international sort of concept. I mean, um, Keir Starmer, as an example, has not made any sort of secret days. He would be much more happier ignoring British laws and going with a much more globalist sort of internationalist concept.
And see, like with that situation, especially, I think this, especially for you, I believe this is where you need to kind of rethink and evaluate what you believe being a realist is, and do you really want to follow the the beliefs of what a realist actually is? You know what I'm saying? Because every time I have a conversation with you about this, I know like you have an issue about it. You know about
In what
what
sense?
about what realists believe in. You know what I mean? Now, like they realists believe that nations should evolve with the times. You know what I mean? It's what I said just now. You know, they believe that clinging to outdated myths is dangerous, and it's or obstructive, basically. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but my point is, you go with the times. Who is deciding what the times are?
Well,
Um,
realists,
isn't there a concept of upholding one's own identities, one own traditions, one own. Didn't want to say culture because I could be criticised for that. Yeah, traditions.
now realists, okay, don't believe that historical events uh, uh, should be analyzed through like moral epiphany. Okay, they believe that events or historical events should be analyzed through cause and effect. Okay, what matters is what works, or what, uh, not what feels noble. You know what I mean? So that's the kind of thing that people who say that they're a realist are saying. So they have to accept that. If they don't accept that, then they have to reevaluate the way they think and stop calling themselves a realist. You know what I
Hang on,
mean?
hang on, hang on. You say what works, but you can only take the point of view of what has happened. You cannot say if we did that, something else that would work, because obviously we didn't do that. Therefore, how do we know that it would work?
Well, the whole point is, it's like realists don't evaluate things on what's noble, what's, you know what I mean, what's right. Okay, they don't care about that. All they care about is what works. That's it.
Okay,
You see what I mean?
a very utilitarian sort of viewpoint.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm, mm.
Yeah,
And what might work in the short term might not work in the long term. I mean, arguably, for the Soviet Union, it worked for a period of time. But look what happened in 90 or 89, 91 or
right.
90.
You see, and being the realists that they were, they decided that it was time to like bring down the wall. You see what I mean? Because that's what worked at that moment. You see,
I don't think been. I don't think this is done by any.
as realists, they finally determined that communism wasn't working. You know what I mean?
Okay,
So,
okay.
you know what I mean? So that's when they decided, hey, and that's the way realists work. You hit that right on the nose. Most of the time, it's what's happening right then and there. They don't care about the long term. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
So that is something that is true.
And this is this issue. This is arguably one of the issues with politics. I mean, a government will only last 5 years, generally speaking.
Uh-huh.
They're not interested in what's going to happen in 10, 20, 30, 100 years' time
Well, see, when
because of their purposes.
this goes back to constitutional government thing that we were talking about, and codifying your constitution too, because like I personally think that it's a good thing that here in the United States our constitution was codified. I found out recently that actually the Ukraine's constitution was codified too. You know, because Trump did that whole thing with the mineral rights, wanting mineral rights.
And and obviously because of the Ukrainian constitution.
Right. They said that that couldn't be altered because it was actually codified.
Hmm.
So by constitutional law, he couldn't allow Trump to take mineral rights from the Ukrainian country. You know, I think that's actually that's something that a lot of these that's coming back to bite a lot of these Ukrainian or these European countries, is the fact that they play around with their constitutions like that. You know, and especially with France. France, you said, has changed their constitution 15 times, dude. You
Yeah,
know, they,
between between the French Revolution and
now
now. Yeah,
it's crazy. And I think that's something that these countries need to really stop and take a look at. Um, and that eventually got worked out too, by the way, because now the United States is selling weapons to NATO. Now we're like,
So is France, so is
well,
UK.
before we were giving it away to them for free. Now we put a price tag on it.
I'm not so sure it was completely for free.
Well, I'm
I'd have
pretty
to
sure.
do some research on that one.
But anyhow, um, now let me make sure I'm in the right place. Okay, so yeah,
Actually, it
so
would be NATO, wouldn't it? Be selling it to NATO, wouldn't be selling it to the UN.
not the UN. No, I meant
Yeah,
NATO.
yeah. The UN is just a diplomatic sort of thing.
Now,
But
like I said, it says the nations are built on laws, armies, markets, and diplomacy, not fairy tales. Okay, um, that's what realists believe in. Identity is often defined by these people by legal status, shared political values, and economic cooperation rather than culture or ethnicity. Okay. Um, and like I said, they also believe that nations must evolve with the times, and they can't cling on to outdated myths because they believe that outdated myths are uh, dangerous and obstructive. And
are we just talking about myths here, or are we talking about actual historical occurrences as well as?
well, when I talk about myths, I'm like that one article that I posted to you after last week when I was talking about uh, the, the Vikings and their invasion into uh, Britain. You know what I mean? Into the UK. There's that document that I sent to you that had to do with the juxtapose that was involved in the myth and what people actually believe today. You know what I mean? Like there's people in England that actually
Technically,
believe a lot of that is real.
technically not the UK. The UK has yet to be formed at this point. Remember the UK, the Welsh English agreement was until what 16th, 17th century, 18th century,
Yeah.
17th century, and yeah, Scotland and England didn't join until 18th century.
But you know what I'm getting at though when it comes to a lot of those, like a lot of history in England was actually built on like myth. You know what I mean? So and like a lot.
Yeah, tradition. Um, these things may have some realistic sort of historical points in them. They could be um, bloated, let's say. It could have been mythologized,
Mhm.
but there is a base of in a lot of cases there is a basis. There's a realistic basis for them, for these concepts. Myths.
Well, realists don't want to hear that. You know what I'm saying? Like they believe that is dangerous and obstructive. And if you remember in our last episode about what they did during that time period, they went out and publicly attacked those ideas. And they're still doing it today. You
Mm-hmm.
know, you have critics that want to attack these myths that actually created like what you guys call nationalism. You know, um, you, uh, they want to point out the flaws so that you guys are
But
brought to
there's
the light.
also the concept of manipulating history to say that something that was um, real is myth. I mean, there was a report not that long ago, or in fact, there's the BBC is in middle of creating I believe it's in middle of creating a TV program or at least a documentary about 1066 and. The BBC being the BBC and all the progressive sort of politics is pushing the concept that black people were in Britain fighting the Normans, which is totally there's no evidence for.
Now that is probably something to do with radicalism that's taken place. Like, I wouldn't necessarily say that has to do with being realist. You know what I mean? Because like realists, first of all,
Yeah,
they're
sorry. My point is that they wish to um, manipulate history and creates the illusion that that black people were fighting the Normans in 1066. So so they want to state that realism, what actually happened, was a myth.
I don't know if that's. I mean, for me, I don't really believe that has to do with realists because realists are more technocratic. You know what I mean? Like they don't believe in things that feel noble. You know what I mean? They like all these stories of nobility and like last year when we had Bobbed up on here, she jumped onto this thing where she said that the kingship was an organic thing, you know what I mean? And it evolved, and that's just a total load of shit. You know what I mean? That's a romantic idea that was developed by socialists. You know what I mean? To
But
justify nobility.
you're
You know,
talking about technocratism, but technically, if somebody was offended by from what I've just said, then I could be visited by the police.
by the
So
technocrats,
yeah, so that's a technocratic sort of valuation.
right? Exactly, exactly. Yeah, there you go. You know, so you've got these kind of things that are going on and they're still going on today, you know what I mean? It's like um it and like when it comes to these realists, you got to remember what I said when it comes to historical events. Okay, all they care about is analyzing it through like cause and effect, you know what I mean? They don't believe in like moral epiphanies and shit like that. Um, all they care about and all they think that matters is what works. You know,
Or
that's it.
what they deem to, what they deem, what they think works.
Right.
That doesn't necessarily mean that it actually works, but because they have to believe that works or will work, therefore it works. As an example, I believe that the sky outside is pink.
Yeah.
Just because I believe that doesn't mean it is.
Now, the thing about the realist, the only thing I say whenever, like with your comment about like the black people and stuff fighting alongside uh, against the Nords, is that realists they do acknowledge like the utility of like national symbols and cultural cohesion and stuff like that. All right, but they see these things as tools. You know what I mean? And it's useful in like uniting a population or solidifying state authority.
Yeah, just a means to get to a
Right.
point. Yeah.
Not like as a transcendental truth. You know what I mean? They don't see any of that. It's a tool that they can use in order to freaking solidify state authority and unite the population. And you can see that on in a lot of different areas, not just in like these um, uh, woke societies or the freaking radicals. You can see it in all of them. I don't care if you call them conservatives, if you call them Democrats, if you call them Republicans. It's there in all of them. They all uh, they all have these characteristics. You know, if you're open minded enough to look and see it, you can see that is true. Like they all carry this kind of craziness. So now the divide between romanticism and realism, it becomes really stark uh, in periods of national crisis or the formation of national formations. You know what I'm saying? When they're formed, um, and a good example for that would be during the unification of Germany in the 19th century. Now, you had romantics like Johann Gottlieb Fichte and Herbert, who spoke on the unique soul of the German people, um, of a common Volk. You know, have you ever heard the term Volk? The Volk?
Oh, what's the Wagner? Yeah. 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 Comes out of the concept of I won't say Aryanism, but it comes out of that sort of Norse
Mm-hmm.
concept.
Now, the
That
Volk
makes sense.
society, actually, believe it or not, was the ones who eventually was the cause for the Volkswagen. Just so people know.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys know that or not.
Uh,
Okay, now while realists
well,
like
actually, to be correct, Volkswagen.
mhm, this
Yeah,
is
well, with the wagon, but
this is
minor
where you,
detail.
this is where you get into the really weird shit. Okay, this is where things start melding and becoming a smelting pot, basically. Okay, now, like I said, you had Johann Gottlieb Fichte and Herbert. Okay, and they would talk about this unique soul of the German people. You know, of the Volk, the common Volk.
Hmm.
While realists like Otto von Bismarck, okay, focused on iron, blood, diplomacy, and military victories. Okay, now uh, Johann dreamed of destiny, and what happened was is Bismarck is the one who made it. All right.
Hmm.
Now, Fichte was a German philosopher who lived during the late 18th and the early 19th century. He's somebody that I wanted to actually point out. Have you ever heard of Gottlieb Fichte?
Yeah, I've done some, as you are aware, I've done some research on the creation of modern Germany, 1870s, 1880s, sort of, and done some research on the historical sort of concepts. But yeah, but
Oh, okay. So we have got a little bit of a burp going on. Give Mark Edworthy time to jump back in here, and we will be ready
Yeah,
to
should
go.
be there. Yeah, I'm there.
Okay.
Lost you for a second.
Yeah, you went out for one quick second, and then we got you back in here. So continue with what you were saying, because
Yeah, I was just saying I've done some research on the creation modern day Germany. But again, I haven't done that was a while ago.
now
We'd have to look
last
at the notes just to refresh me.
last week we had an interesting comment in the comment sections. Okay, now when it comes to this right here, the reason why I wanted to do that is because I wanted to kind of go a little bit farther into it. I don't know if that was a female or a male who mentioned it, but we were talking about the liberal idea, and they wanted to know if um, freaking Hegel was actually a liberal. And
Yeah, I remember. Yeah.
now this is a perfect example when it comes to explaining why I don't think Hegel was actually a liberal, and it was because of Johann Gutenberg. All right. Now he um, is usually he's recognized as like a central figure in the development of of German idealism. He's the one who played a pivotal role in bridging ideas of earlier thinkers like Immanuel Kant with people like with Hegel. All right. Now you can go into the whole spill on Ficht and how he was born in a modest small village. He was born in Saxony, and stuff like that. And because they've got a whole bunch of stuff written about him, about his early life and the hardships that he had to go through, and how he managed to pursue an education because of the support of like this local nobleman who recognized that he was a talented young person. You can get into all that, and they've got.
Actually, yeah, you're just winning a few beers with me. I can.
But that you got to understand that's the realist freaking agenda. That's the way they portrayed him, because that's the way the realists want people to see things. They want to see things about a hardship of life rather than this noble idea of the past. You know what I'm saying? So they do that. They do it in they're not only in art and music and stories, but they do it in their own backgrounds too. Like whenever you sit and you listen to, okay, here in the United States, you remember last week when we were talking about Edgar, or when I mentioned Edgar Allan Poe
Mm.
and what was his name, Emerson, how they had a rivalry. Okay, Emerson is a good example of this. Okay, Emerson wrote all of his books, and in the beginning of his book, he always talks about all this hard stuff that he had to go through mentally as a child, and he had to learn how to overcome it. You know what I mean? And he puts this stuff out so that freaking automatically from the get go, he's like, I'm one of you. I've suffered just as you have. You know what I mean? And that's a common theme that you find with all of this stuff, and that's what you find a lot of when it comes to this guy. And that's the weird part about this right here when it comes to him, because like he's not supposed to be a realist, you know what I mean? But they go through all of this stuff, and they portray him as like being um, a freaking a a romanticist, basically. You know what I'm saying? And I don't see it that way. It's really weird how, and they do that even with Edgar Allan Poe too. You know what I mean? Have you ever noticed
They
that?
do that even modern times. I mean, there's this old joke about Keir Starmer being the son of a toolmaker. Um, yeah, it's still a common trope these days.
Yeah, and trope. That's the perfect way to say it. You know what I mean? They create these tropes. And I think that really goes into what we were discussing before too, where realists eventually started uh, kind of intertwining, or they incorporated romanticism into their beliefs in a certain amount, a certain ways. You know what I'm saying? Um, so that they could probably use it as like a tool, or they could use it as a way of well, it's like a tool basically, to where they can influence people and stuff of that nature. Right? That's really the kind of stuff I see when I hear this stuff. So um,
Well, it goes back to the old hearts and minds sort of thing. If you can demonstrate that you are one of the common people, then in theory, you can capture the sort of um, you can at least try and give an or an impression that you understand what the common person thinks, the common person's viewpoints.
well,
That makes sense.
it does. That actually makes me start thinking of Shakespeare, like you were just a little while ago.
Mm.
You know, um, I think I had an actual conversation about this with some other people, um, which I really don't want to get back into that when it comes to Shakespeare, but it really does stand out when it comes to a lot of that. Um, Now, after after his study in theology and philosophy, he began to like engage with intellectual uh, with a lot of the intellectual trends of his life, and he eventually emerged as like a powerful philosophical voice. You know what I mean? Um, he initially gained attention for his interpretations and extensions on Kant's philosophy, particularly the concept of self or ego as the foundation of all knowledge. The concept of the self or the ego as the foundation of all knowledge. Now, in his view, in Fike's view, consciousness does not passively receive information about the world. Instead, it actively constructs the framework through which the world is perceived. Now, the idea that the self posits both itself and the not self formed a fundamental element in what would become known as transcendental idealism. Now, have you ever heard that term transcendental?
Yeah. Mm.
Which, what's your take on that? Do you know much about it?
Transcendentalism as a philosophy.
Yes.
Yeah. Mm, not overly. Mm, I've got my own views, but um, I wouldn't say I'm ignorant of, but um,
I can give you tons of information on this
mm,
because now, see, first of all, let me tell you, I don't know if you remember it or not, but I told you that I sobered up a few years ago.
yeah.
Okay. And when you go into these 12-step programs, you start doing a lot of weird stuff. Like you start reading books, okay? And
Like everything.
you start learning about things like the transcendentalist movement of of the 1800s, and then you start learning about people like Kant and Emerson and the transcendentalists of the 1800s who had this idea that manual labor was actually the best way for a person who suffered from addictions to sober up. So they believe that you created this community where every day you went out and you plowed the fields with your hands, and it would actually um, sober you up and make you into a new man. You know what I mean? So they
Uh, sorry, as you know, I live in the southwest of the UK, and I am aware of quite a few farmers in this region, and there is a common belief that farmers generally can be quite aren't the most sober.
yeah. Yeah, I know. I live in a small town too, trust me. But this was their idea. So all of these rich businessmen who had problems with drinking and other problems would go to these retreats, these communities where they would learn how to live a transcendentalist ideal. You know what I mean? Some of them also believed that if they sat in chairs across from one another and they were silent, they could actually hear the person talk or hear what the person was thinking just by staring at them. They got into this kind of philosophy, and they believed in that stuff. Now, transcendentalists also included people like you had Emerson, Ralph Waldo Emerson. When you hear people like Thoreau, have you ever heard of Thoreau?
Mm.
Thoreau was transcendentalist. I forgot the name of the woman, but she was the one who actually first established a kindergarten here in the United States. She was a she was a transcendentalist. Now, Walt Whitman wanted to be a transcendentalist, in my opinion. He was really good friends with Emerson, but he just couldn't stop talking about sex. You know what I mean? And it made all the people within the transcendental movement kind of leery of him. And that actually got to the point where even now today, most popular, people who are really who are into talking about Walt Whitman, they make him out to be like he was the first gay patriot or some shit here in the United States, you know? And that's a good example of a lot of crap, you know what I mean? Because, like, there's actually no evidence, no physical evidence that proved that man was even straight, much less gay, you know what I mean? Like, they have no records that he even had a girlfriend.
Okay, I was going to say, did he ever get married? Did he have kids?
No, nothing. I mean, the closest anybody could really come to it was the fact that this man was celibate. You know what I mean? They have no records of him ever being in a relationship, having a girlfriend. He just talked about sex, and a lot of the writing he had was very. It kind of borderlined it. You know what I mean? Like you if you read his books, you would be like, yeah, he's gay. You know what I mean? But there's no actual physical proof saying that this man was gay.
As Niobe would say, an unwilling incel.
Yeah, most likely. Most likely. But I don't know. You know what I mean? It's like freaking. There's actually no evidence of it. But that I believe he wanted to be a transcendentalist too. So transcendentalists other than what I was talking about with him, like Thoreau. Okay, now Thoreau decided he was going to give up civilization and go live with the Indians in the wild. He wrote poems about the grass. You know what I mean? Things of that nature. People shunned him. They called him an Indian lover and stuff like that because he fought for Indian rights and things like that here in the United States. Now, the thing about the transcendentalists too is they actually supported other groups like the prohibitionists and the abolitionists through money. They would fund them, and that was something that caused issues here in the United States, which we call the Civil War. You know, so you had a lot of that going on, and they were the ones who were behind that. So that was basically the transcendentalist movement there, and these people they really did idolize like the transcendentalist movement that was going on in Germany. As a matter of fact, a lot of people here in the United States flocked to Germany just so that they could learn this idea, and it did influence quite a few people. So that's
quite ironic because a lot of Germans were flocking to the US.
Well, not for the education though.
No, but yeah,
you know,
yeah.
Germany was at the top of their game when it came to this stuff during that time. Like people were coming from all around the world to learn these new transcendentalist ideas. And just to finish it off, out of all of that, that's how like the beginnings of these 12-step programs came around, where they started incorporating different types of things, which later on I want to talk about, like the Keeley cure, you know, the Keeley golden cure, but I'm going to do it on a different channel. I'm not going to do it here. It's not as scientific.
Not familiar with that. Yeah, be interested to hear more about that. But yeah, like you said, later on.
Yeah, and then you know I'd like to do stuff like that. But no, that was something that I learned from transcendentalists. After studying theology and philosophy, he began to engage with intellectual trends of his time and eventually emerged as a powerful philosophical voice in his own right. Now, Fichte initially gained attention for his interpretations and extensions of Kant's philosophy, particularly the concept of self or ego as the foundation of all knowledge. I've got my personal issues about the self or ego, you know what I mean, as being like the foundation of all knowledge, because from what I've been finding out just in real life, you know what I mean, is like the ego is the beginning of pride, you know, and pride comes before the fall. That is something that I know is the truest form of
one of the 7 sins. Yeah.
Well, I mean, even if it is one of the 7 deadly sins, it's the truth. If you look at a person that's really over pride, has too much pride, it comes before the fall, you know. It happens every single time you look at it, and that doesn't even have to be religious. That's just real life, you know.
So I was just thinking Dante's Inferno, Divine Comedy.
Yeah. Now, it would be good, I guess, to stay on his philosophy and everything, but now I really don't want to, because like it could get more into just more philosophy than what it is about politics. You know what I mean? Um, Now, his idea that the self posits both itself and not self formed the foundational element of what became known as transcendental idealism. Um, this placed human freedom and self consciousness at the very center of philosophical inquiry, suggesting that reality is ultimately shaped by the activity of the mind. All right. That's basically what all of that comes down to. Now, beyond metaphysics, Fichte was deeply concerned with political and moral philosophy. Okay, he believed that individuals have a duty to strive for moral perfection, and that this personal mission extended to participation in an ethical community or nation. Um, Now, what I've found with him though is he considered it as a duty. In other words, you had to. You know what I mean? It wasn't your choice. Um, he believed that it was the personal duty of each individual to participate. You know, with the community and be a part of the community or the nation. You didn't have So you didn't have the choice to freaking not be a part of. You know what I mean?
So you couldn't become a hermit.
Right.
Yeah, you couldn't just give up everything, go out in the middle of the wilderness and ignore everything. Yeah.
Right.
Mm.
He envisioned like the state as not just like a legal administrative system, but like as a moral order, which through which like the will of free individuals could be harmonized. You know, you know what I mean?
Doesn't this go back to the sort of principle of the state being the parent?
Right, yeah, where the state is going to take care of you, and you know the community will determine what is good for you. So now the thing is too, he also saw education as essential to this. Uh, Now he called for a national system of education that could cultivate discipline and cultivate like disciplined, ethical citizens devoted to collective life. So these had to be cultivated, disciplined, ethical citizens. Okay,
Mm.
who are devoted to collective life. What does that sound like to you?
Mm. I've got various different thoughts going on at the moment. Some of them being quite contradictory. But yeah, no, you feel free. Carry on.
I feel like this is kind of like a freaky sci-fi movie that's taken place where the community artificially inseminates the mother, and then they take the baby and they put it in an incubator to where it can grow up to a certain age, and then it's like incorporated into a family according to its genetic design.
It's almost Huxley, like.
Yeah, that's kind of the
Yeah.
thing that sticks out to me. You know what I mean? The collective life, devoted to the collective life.
And you got your position as determined at birth,
Right,
or determined at conception, because it might not be birth in the traditional sense.
mm-hmm. Now during the Napoleonic Wars, Fike's philosophical outlook took on an overtly national tone. In a series of public addresses delivered in Berlin while the city was occupied by French forces, he urged his fellow Germans to awaken their spiritual and cultural destiny. Um, Now, these speeches were often titled "Addresses to the German Nation," and they became
See, this is before the German nation was really a thing.
it was a newly formed thing. Now, a, a lot of the issues that took place, a lot of people, especially when it comes to nationalism, okay, uh, and social nationalists, a lot of people think Germany, 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 but this is going to dive in a little bit deeper, and you'll find out that it didn't start really in Germany. You'll see a lot of the French influence that caused a lot of this problem. Okay, um, now uh, Germany had issues when it came to France. Okay, um, now it'll basically get into this after I start talking about it, but understand that uh, this happened was delivered in Berlin while the city was occupied by French forces. There had been a big rivalry between France and Germany for a long, long time, and that's something that a lot of people have forgotten when it comes to history and what actually took place. You know what I mean? Like there was a huge rivalry. There was a lot of anger there. And then you had England that was involved too, and that one's even weirder than like the rivalry between Germany and France. To be honest, like I'm still trying to do more research on that one because like
Well, the rivalry with France and England, France and Britain, or France and England, to be more specific, goes back centuries. Hasn't got, like I said earlier, Richard III.
I'm talking about Germany though.
Yeah, but but it's related, and the sort of German, Russian, British sort of. Remember that there is a long history of um, royalty connection between German, Russian, and British or English British royalty.
Mm-hmm. Now these speeches, these addresses to the German nation, they became some of the earliest and most influential expressions of what would become or be referred to as like modern nationalist thought. Okay. Um, Now, Ficht argued that the German people had a unique mission in the world, one that was rooted in not in military conquest, but the cultivation of higher moral order. Okay. Now, he believed that the German language, culture, and education could serve as the vessel for like a spiritual renewal of humanity. Okay. Um, in this sense, Fichte laid the foundation for later Romantic nationalism, where the idea of the nation was intertwined with destiny, character, and cultural identity. So, although Fichte emphasized on the moral and the educational role of the state, uh, although he did that, and it made him influential in the 19th century, especially. Um, these ideas of national unity also attracted a lot of criticism. You know what I mean? So that's where a lot of this comes into play. You know what I mean? And like when you listen to some of the stuff that he did say, like he did say stuff that was actually kind of like the romantic, heroic, noble kind of speeches and everything, but it also caused a lot of the issues that we had later on that eventually led into World War One and World War Two. Like you can't tell me that what I just read to you didn't stick out to you, Mark.
Mm. I've always made this argument that obviously World War Two was due to World War One, but I made the argument that on many occasions that World War One was due to the Napoleonic Wars.
Mm-hmm.
The Austrian and Hungarian Empire was created because of the Napoleonic Wars, which again goes back to the French Revolution.
Now, let me also point out too that Fike he believed that that the German people had a unique mission. You know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
And he didn't believe that it was military conquest, which was good, but it eventually led to that. You know what I mean? And he believed that it had to do with the cultivation of like higher moral order. He also believed that the German language, the culture, and their education was like the vessel for like spiritual renewal and for all of humanity. You know what I mean? So he was pretty much laying the groundwork for this idea that they were freaking uh, the superior race. You know what I mean? Like so that to me, that's the way I see it. That's where that all he laid the foundation. You know what I mean? For that whole idea, and he intertwined it with destiny, the a person's character, and then also you got to look at cultural identity too. That he played on that in my opinion.
Mm.
You know,
So my mind is drifting back to Wagner, and obviously Wagner was alive at this time, so 1813 to 1883, and he created a lot of, he promoted a lot of the folklore, the concept, a lot of these concepts within these music and opera.
like what? I mean, if you want to kind of elaborate on that, that'd be cool.
Uh, well, Wagner, Wagner was to say, used a lot of these themes in his art.
Yeah. Well, a lot of people, like the people that gave him criticism, there were two camps. Okay, there were a lot of people who found his philosophical style as being abstract or difficult to grasp. You know what I mean? So you had that part that really related to the whole artsy fartsy side of things. You know what I mean? They felt that it was freaking abstract and difficult to understand. But then you had other people who really thought that his views, who actually understood what he said, that they honestly viewed his form of nationalism as dangerously idealistic. You know what I mean? And they seen it as exclusionary. You know what I mean? Where it only pertained to a certain people. You know what I mean?
Which I suppose you could argue that Hitler sort of demonstrated.
Exactly. It was. I mean, later it would evolve into that. I see that too myself. You know. Now he did get criticism, but even though he got those criticisms, his influence just kept growing. You know what I mean? Now they claim that his ideas helped shape both liberal and authoritarian uh, thoughts for today. You know, like modern thought and everything. But I don't think it influenced the liberals. To be honest, maybe more of the authoritarian. I don't really.
Yeah.
I don't agree.
Again, I cannot see the argument. I agree with you. I cannot see the argument
Yeah.
as far as liberalism, or, yeah, liberals concerned.
Now, he did inspire political activism. Now, educators, he was big into the whole education thing. Um, Now, later philosophers also saw his vision as a way to align individual freedoms with communal life. Um, I've never found that to be the case. I've never found any form of communal life that actually allows like the freedom of or thinks of the freedom of the individual as being just as important as communal life.
Mm.
You know, I did on my other channel some research into even the holistics and found out like even in holistics they don't believe that the individual's freaking ideas are important. You know what I mean? That blew me out of the water, dude. I'm like, wow. Especially when you start reading up on holistic education, how they feel that children should be educated. You know what I mean? It's freaking mind blowing, dude. Like they believe that we should give in to globalism and become a globalist freaking community where everybody holds hands and think holistic thoughts. You know what I mean? It's like that blew me out of the water because when I was younger, I thought like being holistic was just thinking on natural terms. You know what I'm saying? Trying to live a natural life. Come to find out, that's not it at all. So that I got to be careful. I don't want to upset too many people who are holistic. You know what I mean? Because I know Sonya's holistic, and I don't want to hurt her feelings. So.
Yeah.
Well, I think she's holistic. I know she has a big issue about drug use and being told that they need to use medications and stuff. So I'm not going to go any farther with that because I don't want to get in trouble on YouTube. So
Okay, could be a conversation that we could have between us to a bit later.
Yeah.
Get your thoughts on that one.
Now, just so everybody knows, Fike died in the early years of the 19th century. He didn't live all the way up until the 20th century. So, and this was actually in the earlier years of the 19th century. So this was a culmination of things that happened through up until the 20th century.
Just out of curiosity, have you got dates?
No, I don't. I haven't got not in my notes. I can look it up later on. Yeah. But it was in the early 19th century. Now it did eventually develop into a lot of German philosophy, and that followed.
I suppose it doesn't really matter for the date because that entire century was related to the creation of what we now know as modern Germany.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, the one thing I can say about him was this: like, he wasn't like he wasn't a metaphysicist, okay, and he also wasn't like a patriot. You know what I mean? He was a thinker basically, and his big thing was always his attempt to try to reconcile the inner workings of the self and the ethical life of being a part of a community. You know what I mean? Um, he believed that like true freedom required discipline, responsibility, and a shared sense of purpose. But I think his ideas actually took it a little bit too far. You know what I mean? Like I I had issues when I was in the 12-step program because these idiots would get in there and they'd say, "Well, if you see a click, start clicking." And that's his kind of mentality right there, you know what I mean? Like it's cool. You know, if you see a person who's a part of a clique, then maybe you should start clicking like they are so that you can be a part of the group. You know what I mean? Um,
Okay.
so you can fit in. And I'm like, no, dude, that is like the worst thing to try to tell people. You know what I mean? If you see a click, start clicking.
Yeah. If you see if you see a group of people all agreeing with with certain philosophies, then you've got to agree. Then yeah, you've got to join on. Yeah, yeah, I can see an issue with that one.
Well, I think that actually is something that happened with with society at large. Like, I mean, you know what I mean? It stems from this one right here. You know, everybody has gotten like this idea that they have to fit in and be a part of. You know what I mean? Especially in politics, you know, people don't think that they can just go and vote. They think that they have to be a part of this political party who has ideas that freaking go along with them, and that's the farthest from the truth. Anybody can go and vote. You know what I mean? You don't have to believe in any political parties. You can be an independent voter and go up there and vote on your own. You know, but I think this kind of mentality is what actually started a lot of that garbage. To be honest with you, I could be wrong, but I'm probably I'm probably not. This
Okay. Yeah.
and let me also point out, all right. Now, this all has to do with romantic nationalism, okay? In our previous uh, video or stream, I'd mentioned that these are both issues. It's not just romanticism versus um, realist or realism. They're both an issue that created a lot of the problems that we have today, and eventually this all turned in to socialism. You know what I mean? We're not even at the point now where we're talking about socialism directly. We're talking about the things that led up to it. You know, so that's something that I did want to add before I get going any farther. What do you think? You think I'm completely mad, Mark?
Well, I know you're completely mad, but on this point, no, I agree with you. I can see where you're coming from.
Okay. So before my face falls off and I start coughing and hacking, I think we should take a quick break so that we can go get coffee and everything and come back. It's at an hour and a half, and I think it would be a perfect time to do that so that I can especially do it because I've started coughing a couple times, so I don't want to mess up the stream because I'm hacking my lungs out, you know. So I'm gonna go get some coffee I'm gonna go smoke a cigarette, even though I shouldn't really be doing that. But I'm gonna do it because I'm a rebel like that. And I'll be.
I don't know. There's an old belief that if you're a smoker anyway, then it sort of helps.
Well, I have an old philosophy too, and it's an English philosophy. You know what it is?
Go on.
It comes from Iron Maiden. It says, "If you're gonna die, you're gonna die. So die with your boots on. Die with your boots on, man." So
die doing something that you enjoy.
right.
Yeah.
So I will be right back. I'm gonna mute out and I'll put on some break music from Mr. Robot. It's not gonna be the bad stuff that Mark Edward they told me I shouldn't be putting on here, but it's gonna still be some good stuff. Now this probably isn't appropriate with the topic that we're talking about, so that people know who is on here. Okay, this is for Mr. Robot, so you're not going to hear anything about political history with this music, but it does sound cool. So that being said, I will be back in a little bit. I hope you guys enjoy.
Awakening from an epic dream, awakening from the long dark night. Awakening from history, awakening from duality. The liberation of the human soul to consciousness of the one and all. The activation of the sacred plan, the birthing of a new man. A new man. When the light within is revealed, all the pain and suffering shall be healed, and the truth of love is our destiny, living on the earth in peace and harmony. Perceptions, awakening to the joy of life. Awakening to a new dimension, awakening to a paradise. The illusion of separation disappearing to unity, into the source of a high vibration, into the wonder of a mystery. A mystery. When the light within is revealed, all the pain and suffering shall be healed, and the truth of love is our destiny, living on the earth in peace and harmony. Theophilus, this slur, the thistle sifter is sifting a sieve full of unsifted thistles. Thrust 3,000 thistles through the thick of his thumb. 3,000 thistles through the thick of his thumb. 3,000 thistles through the thick of his thumb. Theophilus, this slur, the thistle sifter is sifting a sieve full of unsifted thistles. Thrust 3,000 thistles through the thick of his thumb. 3,000 thistles. Mr. Robot rolled around or rolled round, and if Mr. Robot rolled around or rolled round, where is the round roll? Mr. Robot rolled round. Where is the round roll? Mr. Robot rolled round. Mr. Robot rolled round. Mr. Robot rolled round. And if Mr. Robot rolled round, and if Mr. Robot rolled sifting a sieve full of unsifted thistles, plus 3,000 thistles through the thick of his thumb. Plus 3,000 thistles through the thick of his thumb. Plus 3,000 thistles through the thick of his thumb. Theophilus Thistler, the thistle sifter, is sifting a sieve full of unsifted thistles, plus 3,000 thistles through the thick of his thumb. 3,000 thistles. Mr. Robot rolled around or rolled round, and if Mr. Robot rolled around or rolled round, where is the round roll? Mr. Robot rolled round. Where is the round roll? Mr. Robot rolled round. Mr. Robot Mr. Robot rolled around or rolled round, and if Mr. Robot rolled around or rolled round, where is the round roll? Mr. Robot rolled round. Where is the round roll? Mr. Robot rolled round. Where is the round roll? Mr. Robot rolled round. Where is the round roll? Mr. Robot rolled round. Where is the round roll? Mr. Robot rolled round. Where is the round roll? Mr. Robot rolled round. Where is the round roll? Mr. Robot rolled round. Hardly had his Hail Highness heard the easy hedgehog when he hit the humming bee by the hunter who had horrible beetles in the human hall. I love to hear the horse's hard iron hooves go hammer, 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 hammer on the easy highway. I hit my horse hard. I'm hurrying out to hunt up hogs. Theophilus Thistler. Theophilus Thistler. Theophilus Thistler. Theophilus Thistler. Theophilus Thistler. Theophilus Thistler. Theophilus Theophilus Thistler, the thistle sifter, is sifting a sieve full of unsifted thistles, plus 3,000 thistles through the thick of his thumb. 3,000 thistles through the thick of his thumb. Theophilus Thistler, thistle sifter.
Once the gods carved earth like a cosmic chessboard, Poseidon claimed Atlantis, his star-born accord. 10 twin suns, throne of tridents waves at his command. Empire stretched from Baobic stones to Mayan sand. Monoliths stacked like Legos blocks no grain could lift. Sonic levitation, gods don't need pulleys or grit. Athena taught Athens, Hephaestus forged veins of gold, but Atlantis spires pierced heaven, stories untold. Ages of virtue, divine blood pure in the veins. No egregious geodesic temples where starlight reigns, but mortality crept in, diluted the grace. Gold turned to rust, hubris eclipsed the god fast.
Vessels of Atlantis drowned in the deep. Poseidon's lost kingdom where titans still sleep.
From Giza to Tiwanaku, the codes and all as above, so below. Cosmic
Empire of modern princes of plasma, their thrones now debris. Echoes of Atlantis where gods walked the sea.
Zeus watched the fall, saw vice crack the divine. Pyramids hummed warnings, but they ignored the signs. Sky split with fury, tsunami swallowed their pride. Atlantis sang screaming, a blueprint survived. Baalbek's foundation, stones that defy modern math. 1,000-ton puzzle, gravity's aftermath. Scholars still baffled how they align the stars. They rode cosmic currents, breaching space-time's bars. Now divers chase shadows where crystal cities gleamed. AI scans the ocean, but truth's a half-dream. Green Freemasons whisper maps in their lodges of lore. Plato's Critias, a metaphor or a war.
Echoes of Atlantis drowned in the deep. Poseidon's lost kingdom where titans still sleep.
From Giza to Tiwanaku, the codes and all as above, so below. Cosmic empire of law, 10 princes
Of plasma, their thrones now debris. Echoes of Atlantis where gods walk the sea.
say Poseidon's seed still flows in our veins. In every megalith, every grid that restrains. The Dogon chart Sirius, Templars guard the flame. But Atlantis tech, it's encoded in our DNA's frame. Zeus's verdict was fire, a flood and ice. Yet the Sphinx still stares, whispering sacrifice. Mortal minds crave power, but miss the design. True kings rule through resonance, not bloodline. Now decode the ruins, their psalms etched in stone. A star-born king's empire, now dust and bone. The hall of records buried neath Giza's cold gaze holds anti-gravity schematics from pre-flood days. Crystal engines hummed, orgun fueled their might, till pride turned their frequencies dissonant blight. The Anunnaki fled, Mars colonies crumbled. Leviathan's bones in the Mariana rumbled. But Poseidon's ghost rides the Bermuda's mist. Evolve past the greed or drown in the abyss. Tsunamis taller than gods, crack continents like eggs. Jungles of Egypt drowned, turned to sand in Poseidon's regret. Mammals shrunk to lapdogs, skies choked by volcanic breath. Waves circled the globe thrice, 3 funerals for death. Up Nepistim, rode the arc of frequencies, not wood. Up tetrahedron ziggurat where anti-grav pulses stood. While Atlantis sank, he spliced DNA and quantum seeds, stashed them in Göbekley's veins and Indus Valley reeds. Volcanic winter's curse, Zeus hit the reset, scorched the grids, erased the moon-ringed internet. Noah's not a shepherd, he's a star-born archivist, cracking hermetic scrolls in caves where mushrooms twist. The survivors crawled from mud with amnesiac eyes, built new gods from scrap metal and fallen skies. Now desert bones whisper where cedars once soared. Man's just a ghost in Atlantis' holographic horde. Blood wasn't water, it was math. A codex purge, Enoch's nightmares digitized in the cosmic surge. As above, so below, the blueprint stays true. Rise from the ashes or drown in what's new.
The flood wasn't water, it was math. A codex purge, Enoch's nightmares digitized in the cosmic surge. As above, so below, the blueprint stays true. Rise from the ashes or drown in what's you. Echoes of Atlantis drowned in the deep, the deep. Poseidon's lost kingdom where titans still sleep. From Giza to Tiahuanaco, their codes etched in awe. As above, so below, cosmic empire of lore. 10 princes of plasma, their thrones now debris. Echoes of Atlantis, where gods walk the sea. So when you see Stonehenge, Angkor Wat spire, know Atlantis lives in the quantum choir. The gods were myths, their mentors in code. Rise from the ashes, or repeat what they owed.
Alright, I cut that off early so that I can get this going.
Right, just give me a sec.
Alright. So, for everybody who's listening, if you want to check out Mr. Robot's channel, you can check it out on Rumble. His channel is called Hacker Radio. Now, Mr. Robot, I always say, is Mr. Robot, aka Columinati, on Hacker Radio on Rumble, and his channel is Hacker Radio. So yeah, you gotta excuse me, I'm sick. I usually say that a lot better, but I completely screwed it up. Sorry, I'm making a mess of a thing. So sorry about that, Mark. I'll try to do it next time. Okay.
Here you go.
Okay. Now, after that, I want to get back to romantic nationalism. Okay. Um, now, the one thing that everybody needs to understand is that romantic nationalism can inspire liberation and cultural revival, but you also have to see that it also led to like exclusion. Um, this is the part where I wanted where I knew people were going to ask, what does this have to do with political history? But it also leads to chauvinism as well, guys. Um, and then this new amazing word that I really never looked at, and it's really hard to pronounce. It's called Revanchist.
Yeah,
You know how to say it?
chest. Haven't said it. Haven't said some. Says
See, it's even harder for people over in England to say than what it is us Americans. Now, when we think of chauvinism, okay, everybody always thinks, yeah, being a male chauvinist, that dirty bastard. You know what I mean? But that it's more than just that. You know what I mean? It's not. It's not just the gender thing where a man's being chauvinistic or anything of that nature. It is a part of it. Don't get me wrong. Okay. Um, but it's also a belief system as well as an attitude. You know what I mean? Um, now, what it's characterized by is an exaggerated or aggressive loyalty to like your own group. It's often accompanied with a belief uh, in its superiority over others. Okay. That's chauvinism. That's how they actually interpreted it back then. Now people don't even relate it to that, but that's also a part of chauvinism. You know what I mean? And it's something that a lot of people do need to understand, even though that.
I like you. I like you pushing it chauvinism to not misogyny. When in reality it just means someone who believes one. I'm not sure if it's just can be related to sex. Male female
Right.
concept, or if it could be pushed further field. But misandry could be a form of chauvinism. Gynocentricism could be
Misogyny is.
chauvinism.
I love being misogynist, though. That's the thing, man. I'd rather use the word chauvinist than misogynist because like Rhea on our chat, you know, whenever we're on there, she loves to call me a misogynist, and I love it when she calls me a misogynist. You know, it's kind of like one of
Yeah.
those. So
But again, it can be used for misandry as well.
yeah.
Mm.
Now, the term chauvinist originally emerged in the context of extreme nationalism. A lot of people don't know that. Where it was used to describe like blind and fanatic devotion to like a person's nation. You know what I mean? Especially in ways that dismissed or devalued other nations and other people. So,
So yeah, I was right in saying that one entity is superior.
right.
Mm.
Now, the name is believed to have come from a legendary soldier named Nicholas Chauvin. I don't know if you knew that or not.
Mm.
Um, who was said to have served under Napoleon, and he no matter what, he remained fiercely loyal to Napoleon even after his downfall. Okay, and now this loyalty, despite national or moral considerations, became the archetype of what later thinkers and writers would criticize as chauvinistic behavior. Okay. So him being loyal to Napoleon after his downfall and even during it was a form of
When you say downfall, what are we talking about? Are you talking about the British imprisonment of Napoleon, or are you talking about post Waterloo?
probably post Waterloo. I would
Yeah.
maybe even but they said even after, so I would
Yeah, because the Napoleon imprisonment. What's the famous 1970s British film that was made? Yeah, actually Waterloo, wasn't it? There's a good scene in that in which Napoleon returns from the island, and what's the island they was imprisoned on?
think that was Devil's Island, wasn't it?
No,
Wasn't he?
but yeah, that island. And there's a good scene where you you just saw French soldiers coming over the two side because they appreciated or they had an appreciation of what he did before he was arrested.
Right. That would be a form of chauvinistic behavior.
Really.
That right there is kind of strange. I'm not used to that term being used in that context. You know what I mean? It really is amazing how Mark Edworthy got bounced. They said enough of him, and they said he's got to go. So it really does amaze me, though, how much that whole meaning did change over time. Okay, I got you back.
Yeah.
Could you hear me that whole time you were bounced?
No, I just got
Hit.
kicked out. I just
Now, when it does that, just hit refresh, okay?
yeah, I just did.
That's one thing I learned real early. I freaked out the first time it happened to me. Now, over time, the meaning of chauvinism expanded beyond its original national context. It came to signify any kind of overzealous belief in the superiority of one's own group, whether that group was defined by nation, gender, class, race, religion, or ideology. Its core, at its core, chauvinism operates on a foundation of exclusivity. It promotes loyalty not through reason or shared values, but through a sense of inherent, unquestionable supremacy. Now, this belief often manifests in the rejection or dehumanization of those outside the favored group, creating an environment where discrimination, arrogance, and even violence are justified under the pretext of preserving or defending the dominant identity. Now, in the context of nationalism, chauvinism becomes particularly dangerous when it's fused with romantic or mystic notions of national destiny. It tends to glorify an idealized version of the past while vilifying foreign influence, reform movements, or internal dissent. Now, unlike patriotism, which may be grounded in a reflective appreciation of one's cultural and historical events. Chauvinism thrives on denial of fault and on constant comparison or comparisons meant to prove superiority. Now, when I hear that, that just sticks out to me as the Nazi regime, Adolf Hitler, for one thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I was going to say, it also reminds me of Napoleon.
Oh
The
yeah,
island I was thinking of was Elba.
was it up?
Yeah, and he died on St. Helena. But yeah, it was Elba during, what was it, 1814 to 1815. But yeah, it reminds me of Napoleon, and also reminds me of Marx, even.
Yeah, actually,
Stalin. Not Marx, Stalin, no.
Stalin especially though. You're right about Stalin. Really, it does stick out with him too. Um, now, it often encourages a simplistic view of the world, dividing people into us and them, and discouraging dialogue, empathy, or compromise. Philosophers and political theorists have long criticized chauvinism as an obstacle to genuine freedom and mutual respect among people. Now, for me, I think that this is where a lot of this gets into the whole. This is where it treads the murky waters. You know what I'm saying? Like philosophers and political theorists, I think, have really turned to a more a realistic kind of approach to things. Like it's not real world solutions. You know what I mean? Because for one thing, being misogynist and being chauvinistic is just one of the attitudes that men do. Women actually have attitudes like that too. You know what I
Like
mean?
that with Andre.
You know,
Yeah.
and it's kind of like that whole thing that goes back to Rousseau and child rearing and Voltaire's criticizing of them. But you know what I mean? But then Voltaire was a big mouth and couldn't keep his mouth shut. I mean, he had to say something about everybody. You know what I mean? So he kind of blended into that crap too. You know what I mean? And like his ego was so big, he had to have a statue put up in his name. Whereas freaking John Locke has like a painting of himself. You know what I mean? It just, I mean, things like that with these guys. You know what I mean? It just because I don't know, when it comes to chauvinism, I think that there's a certain degree of it. You know what I mean? And they talk about it as an obstacle to general freedom and mutual respect among people. You know, well, people haven't respected one another for quite a long time. I still don't think they respect one another. You know what I mean? To be honest with you.
Depends on what you mean by respect. There's an argument to say that the term respect has been misused within recent decades and has been overly used. If that makes sense. Yeah. It has been misused. There's the old argument that respect is earned and not demanded.
That's kind of the stuff that blends into it too. You know what I mean? It Well, I mean, that's a really good example of what I'm kind of feeling when I hear that kind of stuff. You know what I'm saying? Um, it goes back to that. It's like you don't you shouldn't just have to automatically respect another person. You know what I'm saying? It's like people freaking usually earn respect from other people. You know what I mean? Um,
there's mutual respect, and then there's a step over that. There's a further form of respect. I mean, I respect somebody for being a human being, but I might not respect them for their views.
well, also think about it like this: back when you were younger and you was a kid, what did your parents tell you? Don't talk to strangers. Okay.
Hmm.
Now, when you actually take time as an adult to talk to another person, you're showing some form of respect because
Hmm.
you know what I mean. Back in the old days, if you just met somebody, you didn't talk to them. You wasn't no loudmouth that says, "Hey, how you doing?" Just have a whole conversation. You know what I mean? Like a lot of the old timers, they were very watchful about who they talked to and what they talked about. You know what I mean? And I think
Hmm.
that's actually a tradition that's been lost. You just don't open your mouth and have a conversation with
I,
anybody.
I don't know. I don't know. In larger cities, there's the idea of not knowing your neighbours, not speaking to your neighbours, not knowing anybody around you. But in, let's say, where I live, it's not uncommon just to say good morning, just a random person.
Mhm.
Or,
Well, that's different, though. You know, I mean, waving in small towns here, or in the country, I'd say more, not just in small towns, or not even in small towns, but like in countries or in the country. When
mm,
you're driving down a country road, you got this crazy ass farmer that puts his hands up and he waves to you. He doesn't even know you from Adam. It's like, what the hell, dude? And they all do it. Drive by their
and there's been times when, occasions when I've just been sitting in a pub and just a random person would just come up and have a conversation about something random.
Mm-hmm. We'll see that I know that like back in the day, man, people didn't just do that. You know what I mean? It's like people were.
Again, it depends on where you are. It's a cultural thing, and it's not only just cultural based on country, but again, like you said, it's cultural or cultural related to if you live in a small town or a big city. Uh,
Okay.
I would you wouldn't go to, let's say, London and start just talking to somebody random.
Well, I mean, I personally, when I meet new people, they first of all they need to be introduced to me. You know what I mean? I'm not just going to openly walk up to somebody and
Well, I don't do that. Yeah, I don't tend to do that.
so.
Um, yeah.
And then after that, I'm going to be very, very cautious about what I say to that person because, like, I'm not. First of all, I don't want to say something that's offensive to them unless they're
I
like,
don't know. I don't know. In Britain, there's the sort of small talk thing about the old joke about just talking about the weather.
yeah, no, talking about the weather is a good thing. And like now, today, people talk like it's just horrible. Like you're like this old dude, freaking. But I mean, talking about the weather is a good thing. There's nothing
Mm.
wrong with it. But it's been portrayed that way, I guess. Um, Now, Detective Fallen is on our chat, and he says, "Listening to the duo educate me. Hope you guys are doing well." I,
Okay.
at least he can spell better today, man. Like last night, he was up late, and he was trying to say something in chat on YouTube, but like it just got crazy. You know what I mean? He heard Nancy talking about something it had to do with the conversation that you guys were having, and he just started misspelling shit and everything. But just so you know, like Detective Fallen, he's in my gaming group on Home Away from YouTube. And we hang out and talk, so he'll stop in and say a comment every once in a while. Thank you for that, Detective Fallen. If you guys want to check him out, you can check him out on YouTube. He's a gamer. He also has a Discord channel called Home Away from YouTube, where you can go in there and be a part of his community. It's pretty cool. Oh, Mark Edworthy got bounced again. I'm telling you, they don't like Mark Edworthy today, man. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I'm back.
You're back.
Third time tonight.
While you were gone, though, the good thing is Detective Fallen cleared up what he was saying. He said he was just one word off. And he was saying that I was going to Skynet if we went AI. Yeah, okay, it was over Skynet.
Sorry, I just missed that.
Yeah. Okay, so with that being said, let's get back to political history. We're not talking about the Terminator. You guys know that that's my soft spot too. Like, I'll start talking about Terminator and then it's on. You know what I mean?
Well, Nancy said that she's going to plan on having a discussion about so-called artificial intelligence next Wednesday. Oh, yeah, Tuesday, Wednesday.
That'd be cool. So, according to a lot of these philosophers and stuff and political theorists, they feel that like when left unchecked, chauvinism can eventually foster a climate of intolerance and hostility that undermines democratic institutions and human rights. In the 19th and 20th century, chauvinistic ideologies played a major role in the outbreak of wars and in the persecution of minority groups, as seen in many totalitarian and imperialistic regimes that justified conquest and oppression by appealing to national greatness or racial purity. And that right there, that does hit pretty hard when it comes to Nazi Germany. You know what I mean? It's kind of conflicting when you look at it. You know what I mean? Because it did cause a lot of wars and everything. You know what I mean? But also, I think that there's a bit of overdoing it in today's world. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't really undermine democratic institutions. You know what I'm saying?
It can do.
Well, to a certain extent.
Yeah, not necessarily where that always happens, but it can do.
It could prevent women from being able to have positions in high places. It can also,
or vice versa.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or ethnic people. You know what I mean? That having places. People who aren't.
I think everybody's ethnic, one way or another. The concept of ethnic people is a bit of a
minority groups is basically the better way of saying it. That's probably the best way of saying it. Now, in modern times, chauvinism has also been seen or has been used to describe attributes within like social relations, particularly in the context of gender. The term male chauvinism came into use in the mid 20th century to criticize the worldview in which men believe themselves to be naturally superior over women. Now, right there, I mean, I always thought that that was true. At least that's what my dad told me.
I think this goes back to the sort of 1960s Germaine Greer sort of feminism sort of concepts.
So, I mean, I need this clarified from a wise man from England, though. I mean, are men themselves naturally superior to women?
Depends on what you depends on what you mean. Depends on what you're talking about. I mean, naturally superior in what context?
I'm just asking, dude.
I mean, if I want to be politically correct, I would say no. Everybody's the same, but that's a bit of a cop-out answer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's kind of the same way I see it too. You know what I mean? It's like, first of all, you should have mutual respect for a woman. Women are beautiful, you know, creatures, and that's how I feel about them. But at the same time, you know, you've got to and this really isn't about like politics. You know what I mean? But I'm gonna go there. Like, you really shouldn't have a woman sitting in a boxing match with a freaking man. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I was just thinking about the strength and all the arguments in relation to sports that have been keeping cropping up over the last several years.
Right. And like on our show Untethered, you know how I always talk to you about like current events versus political versus this is more of a current event than it is about political history or politics, even in my opinion. You know what I mean?
Again, your argument on what a current event is a bit obscure.
Well, no, it's actually a realist point of view, to be honest, and I should be ashamed of myself for that. You know what I mean? Because I'm trying to categorize things, and that's what realists do. They like to categorize, and this is actually a perfect example of what a realist would do when it comes to chauvinism. You know what I mean? They're trying to categorize, in my opinion. It's a form of categorizing, compartmentalization, and stuff of that nature, which is something that a realist really enjoys doing.
I mean, going back to your boxing match in an analogy, I can think of certain women I definitely wouldn't want to have a boxing match with.
Yeah.
Backside.
Well, according to realists, okay, this form of chauvinism reflected like the same underlying traits of arrogance, exclusion, and domination, but within the framework of personal and social identity rather than national allegiances. You know what I mean? Excuse me. But in both cases, the defining feature is the inability or refusal to recognize the dignity and equality of those who are different. You know, I actually I do recognize the differences. Okay, um, I I find dignity when it comes to women. You know what I mean? Equality. I believe equality is like a made up word that is something that we wish to achieve. You know what I mean? But we haven't made it there yet. Because even like in classical liberalism, they talk about equality. You know what I mean? So it's not like it's a socialist ideal, because it's not. You know what I mean? It's not even a nationalist idea or uh, classic liberal or conservative idea. It's something that, well, I don't even know if it's right for me to be using equality with conservatism, to be honest. I mean,
What do you mean? Equality within the context of conservatism?
well, originally, uh, the original concept of conservatism was the they created the idea of, or the conservatist idea, because in retaliation to what had taken place in France during the revolution there. You know what I mean? Like, they really supported the monarchy. They despise the idea of what the radicals over in France were talking about. They were talking about liberty and equality and equity and things of that nature. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
And that's kind of where they went their separate ways on it. So, and when it comes to conservatism, you can't avoid talking about England, because that's basically where the term conservative actually was born. You know what I mean? And I think that's pretty messed up. To be honest, it really is pretty messed up, but it's true. I don't know how it's messed up either, but it really is if you stop and think about it. Like, shit, it came from England, dude. You know?
I'm just thinking of the sort of left wing's concept of equality, the old equality of opportunity versus equality of outcome arguments.
Yeah, I see that kind of as like a Labor Party kind of load of shit. You know what I mean? Like something the Labor Party would put out. They got all of their anarchists and radicals working hand in hand with the Whigs, trying to figure out how they could present equality as something that's been achieved. You know what I mean?
Again, when you say equality of what, though?
Right, exactly. I mean, you're going to have to break that down into certain categories. And you got those realists, those realists, they just love to compartmentalize. And we can create bureaucracies that's going to work on all this. We're going to have this freaking department working on this kind of chauvinism, and this department working on this kind of, we'll have you guys tamed before long. Okay, so okay, now well, I just don't know. Whenever they start talking about like the refusal to recognize the dignity and equality of those who are different, it just kind of, it's like, that's the way people have been since the beginning of freaking civilization, dude. It's like we live in a world now where it's actually better. You know what I mean? Like nobody in today's world really understands how well we have it. You know what I mean? It goes back to like last year when we were talking to Bob Dub, and I told her, I was like, look, man, you couldn't even go hunting in the woods for food, because if you did, the king's men would capture you and kill you because you stole food from the king.
Mm.
You weren't even on.
I remember having a conversation with somebody that we both know quite recently in relation to the concept of equality and sort of countries.
Yeah. They're doing it to you again, man. He's getting hit hard. So I'm gonna go and make sure and see if Mr. Detective Fallen is on there again. Yeah, he said Skynet is the evil company from Terminator. Yes, I know that, Detective Fallen. I know. You guys be safe, enjoy your hot topics, and listening to you guys discuss your opinions. Thanks for stopping by, Detective Fallen. I did do a shout out for you, and I hope to hear from you again, man. Always good to hear your feedback. We got you back. I decided to go and make sure that, or check the streams chats to see if anybody said anything. And by the way it looks, we didn't have anything really all that important on all the other ones. Vicky or Nancy actually has been talking. She said some stuff to Vicky on her thing, but other than that, they haven't been doing nothing in Teams. So
Yeah, I saw comment you having a discussion with her just before we started.
yeah, I let her know we were doing this stuff. But see, this is the more rational, real political conversation. So we're not going to get too many people to volunteer to come in and talk about this, especially like right now we're talking about chauvinism, and we're actually doing it in a respectful manner. You know what I mean? How many people do you know that can do that, Mr. Edworthy?
I don't know. As we were talking about earlier, there's a specific YouTube channel that we both watch.
Oh, come on now. You know the Lotus Eaters. They couldn't come to this caliber of intelligence, dude. This is like we're breaking ground. Okay. I know who you were referring to, but they ain't got nothing on me and you, dude. Look at this.
Yeah. Again, we've got to be somewhat careful because I could be, well, let's say I could be breaking rocks.
Okay. Well, I think we're doing a pretty good, job actually, because we're even putting information in the English government. Actually, would love to hear. You know what I mean? Like talking about dignity and equality for those who are different. You know, that's about as positive as you can get when it comes to that putrid. And I said it out loud, even. You know what I mean? Even though it just disgusted me when I said it, like my tongue turned like real pink and it got real thick and started swelling up because of it. You know, it was kind of disgusting. But that could be because I'm sick, you know.
Yeah, more than probable.
Now, they also go on to say that it distorts the principle of fairness, justice, and mutual understanding. Okay, by replacing them with pride, fear, and resentment. Whether expressed through nationalism, sexism, or any other group-based ideology, chauvinism narrows the human perspective and weakens the possibility of peaceful coexistence. I don't know really who they're aiming that at. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like because like I,
I don't know. It's a very generalistic sort of
yeah,
thing. Yeah.
peaceful coexistence. Now, first of all, you're never gonna live a peaceful coexistence with a woman, dude. That's, that is just not going to happen. Okay,
You never know.
you're living in a fairy tale world if you believe that that is going to happen. Okay, because like one day you're sitting on the PlayStation playing the games. You know, you got this hot chick sitting next to you talking all this good talk. Next thing you know, she's got a ring on her finger, and it's time to go to the grocery store. You know what I mean? So all of a sudden, it goes from playing the PlayStation to going to the grocery store and shopping so that you can eat at
Oh, you
home.
can have an enjoyable, peaceful time. Go to the grocery store.
Well, you're an older man now. We're talking about back when we were younger, okay?
Okay.
Okay, now think about it. Back when you was younger, okay?
Yeah.
Now you're going to the grocery store, you're shopping for food that you can eat at home rather than going out to eat. So now all of a sudden you're going from going out to eat to eating at home with your woman. And guess what happens at home? All of a sudden babies start popping out. You know what I mean?
Okay.
So there's no peaceful coexistence, trust me, when it comes to that stuff. Like I don't understand why like gay people wanted marriage, to be honest with you, because like freaking it's hard enough for freaking straight men to handle being married. You know what I mean? Why would a freaking person who was gay want to be married when they can sit and watch a married man go through the things that they have to go through? You know what I mean? It's a rough job. It really is. I have a lot of sympathy for married men. They put up with a lot of stuff.
Okay.
Seriously, like I've got a whole lot more freedom than what a married man does. Just saying.
I suppose that depends on each individual circumstance. Uh,
How well they've been groomed.
okay.
Okay. Now, if according to this, it feeds on insecurity and ignorance, drawing strength from myths of purity and narratives of victimhood. That would be what I was just talking about, I guess, about being a victim. Like once you get trapped in being married, you become a victim of the establishment. This is, you know what I mean? This is the way it is. You're supposed to get married. You're supposed to respect your wife, do what she tells you to
I don't
do.
know. Respect and being subservient is two different things. Or two
I,
different things.
I'm talking about the real world, dude. Just saying.
Okay.
I'm talking about how things really work. Okay.
Again, you very sort of broad.
Well, I mean,
Not everybody's the same.
if you are in a relationship, okay, and you tell a woman that you are not going to do something, okay, things aren't going to be good. Period. That's that's just being in a relationship.
I don't know. I don't know. I've been in relationships where there hasn't been any sort of overly demand. I've never actually been in a overly demanding relationship. Let's just put it that way.
Okay. Now, it goes further to say, in doing so, it poisons dialogue and transforms shared human experiences into battlegrounds of dominance and exclusion. Now, relationship wise, I can see that as being true to a lot of extents, but that is more glaring when it comes to politics too. You know what I mean? In the sense that what they were talking about there, when it comes to politics and nationalism. You know what I mean? That does happen. Like and like you were talking about with Napoleon too. Okay, when you take a look at Napoleon and then you go back to the French Revolution, that one guy we were talking about who had that name that was real hard to say. Um, he didn't believe in dissent. You know what I mean? Dissenters were like traitors to the cause. You know. Um, so that's kind of where it really kind of sticks out to me as a form of dominance and exclusion and a form of superiority. You know what I mean?
Mm.
Where dissenters would be less than basically if you dissented against their ideal of what liberty should be. You know.
Okay. Yeah, okay. What do you mean? Yeah.
So now we get to the hard word, the revanchism. Okay. Now, revanchism refers to a political and emotional ideology that centers on the desire to recover lost territories, restore former power.
Okay.
See, they did it to me this time.
Yeah. Yeah.
See, they're against me. They want to prevent the truth from being spread to us. Understand, you're hearing it now. We are under attack. Okay, so Revanchism refers to a political and emotional ideology centered on the desires to recover lost territories, restore former power, or avenge past defeats. Okay, now the word itself originates from the term meaning revenge or retaking, and it first gained prominence in the political discourse of 19th century Europe. Revanchist sentiments often arise in the aftermath of military defeat or territorial loss, especially when the populace or political leadership believes that the loss was unjust, humiliating, or reversible. Okay? This desire to reverse historical outcomes can become a powerful force in shaping foreign and domestic policy. All this reading is really messing my throat up. Now, particularly when it is particularly, I gotta find my place. Particularly when it is combined with nationalism and feelings of cultural or ethnic superiority. Okay. Now, this is something that I always relate to when I talk about World War One and World War Two. Okay, and a lot of people have a misconception about those two wars. Like they think that they're two separate things, and that's not what they are. Okay, and it's just like the Napoleonic War with Germany. Okay, now Germany, whenever Germany was fighting against France before World War One, it kind of goes into this. Okay, now the most well-known example of this can be found in France. And this is where I was saying, like, don't everybody always thinks of these kind of discussions as being German, German being the result or the cause of all this, okay? But it really wasn't. It was France. um, and particularly after their defeat in the Franco-Prussian War, okay?
Hmm.
Now, during this war, or the aftermath of it, France lost regions of Alsace, I think is how they say the name.
Alsatian, Alsatian. Yeah.
Yeah,
After the dog. Yeah, yeah,
in Lorraine. Now, a lot
yeah.
of people forget about they forget about Lorraine and the Alsace. I'm thinking maybe.
Alsatia, I think.
Mhm. Now that was actually during the time period where you were talking about, where it was the newly formed German Empire,
Hmm.
where they went from Prussia and they became the newly formed German Empire. Now that caused a lot of what we're talking about here. You know what I mean? Sentiments of revenge, basically, or you know, unjustly losing territories. They had that real deep resentment for it. Many people in France viewed this territory loss not just as like a military setback, but like a stain on national pride and an injury to like the French soul. And you can't tell me that France doesn't have uh, a lot of chauvinistic attitudes too when it comes to this stuff. I mean, it's just historical when you look at it. You know what I mean? And then you get into this because they had a lot of pride in their country. You know what I mean? And then when the Germans came and defeated them and took this land, you know what I mean? It was devastating to them.
Mm.
Now, for decades after, the idea of reclaiming Lorraine and Alsace, this became like central to the French political thought and their national identity. You can also see this kind of in the War of 1812 with America and England too, because England was constantly boarding American ships and taking sailors that were on their ships as prisoners. And they would imprison them in England because they were actually conscripted into the English Navy before the United States was actually free. You know what I mean?
Well,
And
technically, they were British citizens at the time.
right, exactly. And
Yeah.
when they ended up becoming sailors for America, that's when we really needed to have our Bill of Rights, because if we had a Bill of Rights, that would have protected our sailors. You know what I mean? Now, after the English fired on an American ship, that created a resentment. And a lot of people don't realize it. Like between 1812 and between the Revolutionary War, we actually had a naval war that took place between England and America, and nobody even knows about it. You know what I mean? And that all involved the fact that the English fired on an American ship, and because of that, we built up our navy, and we ended up having like the largest navy in the world.
Also, isn't it also related to the so-called pig war?
Pig War.
where that island just off, is it Alaska?
I don't
Or
know about
no, just off Canada, just outside or between the border of Canada and the US, where it's it is or was is an American territory, but at the time it was argued it was contested land between Britain and the US,
it. Could be.
or Britain and America.
It could be. Now, you called it
War, yeah, it was just before um, the U.S. Civil War, when a potential war could have been created due to the ownership of a pig.
my goodness, that's ridiculous.
Hmm.
That really is. That's chauvinistic right there too. That really is, and it would actually pertain to this. I would almost believe where it was resentment. You know what I mean? That was fueling up because eventually that was the whole reason why we built our navy was so that we could go to war with England. And a lot of people don't understand that here in the United States. Like it wasn't England that started the War of 1812. You know what I mean? That was actually us. We're the ones who started it. You know what I mean? And that's something that a lot of people who don't really like history don't understand. That was completely different than the Revolutionary War. You know what I mean?
Oh, Britain rather than England.
You know,
Be more
well,
accurate.
well, I like saying England because it just I love talking really really bad shit about you guys. I don't know why.
Specifically the English, not the British.
Well, I mean, it's like all you guys really do is make good bread. You know what I mean? So far from what I've heard, I'm just going off of word of mouth, but
Okay. I think we've had a bit more cultural influence than just bread making.
I've asked you, dude. You keep coming back to bread. Okay.
Well, one of many, many things.
We even had a show celebrating England's birthday, dude, and the best that I heard was the bread thing. Okay. And
You ignored all the other points that I made at the time.
well, they had to do with like politics and stuff, and like the English
Remember,
language.
if it wasn't for us, you would know your constitution probably would be all completely different.
Yeah.
The 1689 bill Act of Rights.
Well, I mean, we wouldn't have the Bill of Rights because we wouldn't have to worry about like soldiers kicking in our door and stealing our shit. You know?
Remember, we created the concept of courts of the westernized justice system.
That's what I was saying. That's why I like, dude. I mean,
So again, we had more influence than just bread making.
yeah. Okay, let's get on to this so that we don't like start talking about like civil law and shit. Okay. Yeah. Now, for decades after, like I said, the idea of reclaiming these two territories became central to the French. Okay, it fueled public resentment. It shaped military policy, and it colored diplomatic relationships. The drive to recover what had been lost became more than just a strategic objective. It became a moral imperative, one that intertwined with notions of historical destiny and cultural integrity. Okay. Um, now, Revanchism is often grounded in a romanticized and mythologized version of the past, where prior national greatness is remembered not in terms of uh, complexity or balance, but as like a golden age stolen by treachery or betrayal. Um, this tendency to simplify history for emotional appeal enables revanchist rhetoric to take root in the collective imagination, particularly during times of economic hardship, political instability, or perceived cultural decline. Now, uh, this is what also sticks out to me, not only in France during what had taken place there, okay, um, but it goes right into Germany. You know what I mean?
Mm.
Because of what had happened between Germany and France prior to World War One, France had felt this, okay, and it produced this form of Revanchism, okay, where they had built up this fairy tale that they had somehow lived once in a golden age of France, you know, with the Corsican brothers and the what was it the they had that movie out with the three Frenchmen. What was that? The Corsican. You know the whole myths behind the Corsicans. Yeah,
Means well.
the three. What was it? They were supposed to be. Well, the Corsicans. Period. I don't even have to have example like that. Like
Oh, we're talking about the. No, we're not talking about musketeers here.
yeah,
Oh,
the Musketeers. Exactly.
okay.
That's
Yeah.
exactly what it was. Thank you. Like the ideas of the Musketeers and the Corsicans and how noble they were, and you know the golden age of France where it was all about saving the French king and protecting his nobility. all of that all of that is what culminated during that time period. You know what I mean? Because of the loss of that territory between
Yeah.
Germany and France. And that culminated, and that is what eventually, in my opinion, evolved into what happened with World War One. You know, um, and as a result of World War One, the same thing ended up happening with Germany or the Weimar Republic afterwards, because they went through the same thing that had happened with France. They created this environment where first of all, they were in a period of hardship, you know what I mean? And they were looking for some kind of hero or savior that was going to pull them out of that decline, you know what I mean? And here come Adolf Hitler.
Oh, what was the famous film 1973 Cabaret?
Yeah.
With the actress singer.
What's her name? She has that black hair.
Yeah.
I really didn't like her all that much. I know who you're talking about, though.
Good film though. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Now, that to me is something that really sticks out to me when it comes to that. Like, and you can see that in a lot of areas too. You can see that with Israel, especially. because there's more to come with this, and it's a very, very hot topic. You know what I mean? And it just keeps getting passed on from one incident to another when it comes to this. This is actually something that really sticks out to me. It's a common theme, you know.
By the way, Lisa Minnelli.
Yes, Liza Minnelli.
Yeah, Lisa
Liza
Minnelli.
Minnelli. Yes.
Yeah. I was just thinking. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But, yeah.
It's true. Now, let me make sure I know what I'm talking about. Now, this tendency simply all it really is it's a tendency to simplify history, like I was saying, for emotional appeals. This enables revanchist rhetoric to take root. You know what I mean? In the collective imagination, and this is where we come to not just France, but look at the Weimar Republic with the economic hardship and the political instability that took place. And then it was bad enough with that, but then you had France who was demanding reparations, and they were coming in and they were forcing the Germans into forced labor. You know what I mean? In order to receive those reparations. So that caused a lot of anger and resentment there too. So you see that taking place. You know what I mean? You get where I'm. You know all about that, right?
Yeah, I guess the concept. Get the argument, yeah.
And now the thing of it is like most leaders, like Hitler, who embrace this, typically use history as a weapon. They invoke grievances and ancient rites of justification for things
history
like
or mythology.
all of it. It doesn't matter.
Yeah,
They use it as a weapon. You know what I mean? They usually has to do with grievances, things of that nature. Ancient rites as justifications for expansion, or expansionist ambitions, you know, or aggression, or aggressive foreign policies, basically. And that's basically what Hitler did when he was coming to power. You know what I mean? He was using history as a weapon. He was bringing up grievances, and all of a sudden Germany, because of their hardship, had become a victim because of these horrible people. You know what I mean? And that was what led to it. And the same thing goes back to France. It's like they were having their hardships because of all these horrible things that Germany was doing to them. They had stole their territories, you know, and it just becomes a common theme, you know. So this emotional appeal can unite people behind like a common cause, but it can also silence dissent and obscure practical considerations in favor of ideological zeal. Now, in many cases, Revanchism is inseparable from ethno-nationalism. Now, that's a big word right there, and a lot of people don't take a look at what that does. And we were talking about, what was it, pan-Slavic beliefs last week?
Yeah.
Now, if you really want to get into ethno-nationalism, you also need to look not only at pan-Slavism, you have to look at uh, pan-Russian, Russo, pan-Russian, or something like that. But ideologies, that was a big thing back then too, as well as a lot of all of these, mostly Eastern uh, beliefs. You know what I mean? They really really get intense and crazy. And don't get me wrong, they at least, those were their belief systems, and they had a right to believe that stuff. But you also have to understand too that at the same time, these supposed realists were attacking them and criticizing them for it, which created a lot of anger and frustration. You know what I mean? It escalated and escalated until we had what we eventually had, which was World War One and World War Two. You know, and I still say it to this day. World War Two shouldn't have been called World War Two. It should have been the continuation of World War One. You know what I mean?
Mm.
Just like I was talking about with France and Germany. You know what I mean? And like with the Civil War, and then the War of 1812. Because of resentments, revenge was the reasoning behind the War of 1812. You know what I mean?
It gets a bit more complicated than that because of the creation of Bolsheviksm, communism, Marxism.
Well, that Bolshevism, it intertwines with a lot of what we're talking about here between realists and romanticist. Okay, like the Bolsheviks, they turned away from their religion.
Sorry, what I mean, it became more complicated to create the uh, the the creation of World War Two, the
Well, that actually
formation of World War Two.
now World War One was actually like there was a lot of crazy stuff going on there because like we had World War One going on, but then at the same time there was the Russian Revolution, which was taking place. You know what I mean? So everything got kind of confusing for people. You know what I mean? And historically, it became foggy. You know what I mean? Because you had the red hats and then you had the white hats, and like today when I hear
several
right.
several other bodies, let's say.
Yeah, and that's one reason why I wanted to actually just kind of like focus on this and go into it because it kind of dives deep into it. You know what I mean? And it expresses that stuff without having to go into the whole.
Yeah. So I was also thinking of the Spanish War preceding
Yeah.
World War Two.
Yep. Now, that's the one thing I wanted to mention though about ethno-nationalism. That's a very 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 big word with a lot of meaning into it. I mean, and we could go into it, but I wouldn't want to stay fully stuck on it because that could take us into a whole.
Yeah. I was just thinking, like, muddies the waters a bit. Quite a bit.
Well, it doesn't just muddy the water, but we're going to be talking about ethnic cleansing. We're going to be talking about pogroms, which, I mean, I have no problem talking about it, but that is a huge, huge subject. You're going to be talking about how the Russians and the Germans and all them would send out pogroms that would hunt down Jews and hunt down gypsies and slaughter entire villages because of their belief system. You know what I mean?
And also, if you want to take it even further afield, let's talk about Turkey,
Yeah.
the Ottoman Empire. Yeah. So,
Yeah. It gets
there we
real.
go.
Yeah.
Real.
So, I mean, the best I can do is I can say, if you're really interested in this, this is what you need to find out about ethno-nationalism. So that'll kind of wake you up to what was going on during, and that would bring you into a lot of crazy stuff. Now,
Nationalism and love. This is where it gets more confusing because, again, the Ottoman Empire, the Turkish concept, wasn't just solely on nationalism. It was more of a theologic argument.
yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. It goes back to Romanticism, and it goes back to realism. And they were fighting amongst one another. Okay, I mean, it eventually turned into physical fighting, not just fighting with words. You know what I'm saying? And beliefs and criticizing this and It actually developed into an actual physical war. You know what I mean? Or
Or two
multiple.
wars. But,
Yeah,
multiple wars.
multiple wars. You know.
Yeah.
Now, in many cases, revanchism is inseparable from ethno-nationalism, where the claim to lost territory is tied to the belief that certain lands rightfully belong to a particular people by virtue of heritage, language, or blood. Now, this fusion of identity and geography makes territorial disputes deeply personal and often intractable. It encourages the belief that borders are not determined by treaties or diplomacy, but by ancestral claims and historical justice. The result is that Revanchist ideologies often dismiss modern international norms and institutions as illegitimate or weak, insisting instead on the primacy of historical entities and the necessity of retribution. Now, that is where it really, really gets intense. When you look at what played out, okay, during World War One and World War II, and the battle between France and Germany, and like I said, I have no clue how England ended up into that, but they did because Churchill apparently had a big resentment against Germany. You know what I mean? I don't really understand how that all came about being, to be honest, not 100%, but all of this stuff has a lot to do with what I just explained there. You know what I mean? They believed in ancestral claims. The Austro-Hungarian Empire, that was the center area for the Holy Roman Empire. It was the center of the world for the Holy Roman Empire. You got to remember that. You know what I mean? Austro-Hungarian thing, and that was the one thing Germany wanted to do, is they kept wanting to reunite Hungary and Germany under one country and recreate the Austro-Hungarian Empire. You know what I mean? That was a real big deal to them. They really wanted to reunite those two territories, and that was even before the war even broke out. And this thing about like um, lands rightfully belong to a particular people by virtue of heritage, language, and blood. You you start seeing people talk about speak our language or get the hell out. You know what I mean? That was a big thing that was started during this time period. Um, and they also had a thing going on in Germany with the Volk, which had to do with blood and soil.
Hmm.
I don't know if you remember that or not.
Yeah.
But like the Volk was actually the beginning of a lot of this stuff. You know what I mean? And this is where it all comes from. You know what I mean? It's like when you hear people say "speak our language" or "go home." In today's world, that's where all this is where all that started. You know what I mean? And it goes back to this stuff. So that's why I always bring that up. And a lot of people who I mention that to don't really understand that. They don't understand that this has to do with how countries were setting up blocks against Germany so that they could frickin' expand. It had to do with ideologies being attacked because of their belief systems. You know what I mean? And conflicts. And Czechoslovakia was big on this too. That's another country that we forgot to mention. Like the Czechs,
Hmm.
they were notorious for that back then because they had real strong socialist ideologies that disagreed with the Germans in the way the Germans ended up.
But again, Czechoslovakia, no, Czech Republic didn't have a real good time post World War II anyway.
Well, even during World
Nor
War.
did Hungary.
Yeah. Matter of fact, the guy who tried to set up these blocks surrounding Germany ended up being the guy who had to flee from Czechoslovakia to France because the same people that he was trying to put these blocks up against, which, by the way, these supposed blocks in Europe, they don't work. Just so you know what I mean? It's the dumbest idea Europe has ever come up with was the block. And if you don't know what
tell the EU that.
exactly, okay, and let me tell you something, okay? You and anybody listening, if you don't believe me, do freaking research on the history of just the block, and see if you think that blocks work, because they don't. It's historically proven that these blocks are worthless. They cause more problems than good. Okay, and I can get into that later on, but it does pertain to what we're talking about here in a weird way. I just went. Did I just go into a political rant, dude?
Yeah, I was just thinking about again the European Commission in relation to this, but yeah, that's an interesting one,
Yeah,
which is current, which is a current issue.
yeah. I mean, all of this stuff. It just if you hear what we're talking about and something doesn't ring in your head, especially if you're in Europe and in England, you know what I mean? If something doesn't dawn on you, then there's something wrong with you. Like, you know what I mean? It's like the other night when we were having that conversation on Nancy's show. I noticed that something from this show rung out to you in that conversation. And to me, I thought that was cool because we were actually doing something. You know what I mean? It shows me that this stuff is making things kind of stick out. And you can't tell me that what we're talking about here doesn't resonate into the things that are going on in today's world, because it is, you know, it really is. Um, so let me see here. I got to find out where we're at. Now, Revanchism movements do not always operate on a grand geopolitical scale. They can also appear in more localized forms where communities seek to reassert control over lands or privileges they believe were unjustly taken. In such cases, revanchism may align with populism, religious revivalism, or reactionary conservatism, all of which draw strength from a sense of cultural siege, a sense of cultural siege and historical grievance. Now, in every instance, the underlying narrative remains the same. Something once great was stolen or destroyed, and only through righteous action can it be restored. So that right there really sounds like a Trump rally to me. I mean, I'm just saying, it really, that right there is probably something that really relates to today's world more than anything else. You know what I mean? Like, make America great again. You know what I mean? I think we need to expand that to make Europe great again and make England great again. What do you think, Mark?
Again, make Great Britain great again.
Well, that's a lot of initials, though. Make
Or make the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland great again. How many initials is that?
I don't even think that's going to make a good word. Like, we at least have MAGA. You know what I mean? You guys have. I mean, what would that come out to be like?
and the Commonwealth. Don't forget the Commonwealth.
Okay, so the dangers of revanchism lies in its capacity to reignite old conflicts and justify new aggressions. It turns memory into a weapon and history into a battlefield. Rather than promoting reconciliation or mutual understanding, it thrives on division and revenge. Revanchist thinking often distorts the past to create a simplified vision of right and wrong, in which one's own group is always the victim and others are always to blame. This black and white view of the world can fuel extremism, undermine diplomacy, and destabilize entire regions. It replaces compromise with confrontation and justice with vengeance. Okay. In the broader philosophical context, revanchism stands in contrast to historical realism, which seeks to understand and learn from the past without turning it into a justification for future violence. Where realism urges caution, humility, and perspective, revanchism demands action, redress, and punishment. It offers certainty and righteousness in a world of ambiguity, and it appeals to those who feel displaced, dishonored, or forgotten. That is why revanchism often becomes most attractive in periods of decline or transition, when the old order is fading and so new and it's fading, and no new stability has yet emerged. So in such moments, the promise to restore a lost world can seem like the only answer to confusion and despair. And that right there sums up what's going on right now to me. You know what I mean? I think that is probably the most that's probably the most clearest description of what's happening now. You know what I mean? And like when you look at it in this kind of way, man, you take a look at what happened with Hitler. You really do see like this is a recurring theme. You know what I'm saying? Things were chaotic back then before World War II. Their economy was gone, dude. They've got old pictures of Germans burning their money for freaking heat. You know what I mean? I don't know if you remember those photos or not.
Yeah.
You know, and but they were in despair. They had no freaking solution to their way out. You know what I mean? They were caught up by a lot of shame because they were filled with a lot of ancestral pride, you know, and things of that nature. And then here come Adolf Hitler preaching everything that freaking they wanted to hear. You know what I mean?
You could say that's something similar in countries like Venezuela recently, and in certain African countries. So,
But you can say that about here.
I mean, talking about more present day sort of situations.
You can say that here about here in the United States too. To be honest.
Yeah. But you can still buy a loaf of bread relatively easily.
Well, you can also obviously see the United States is in its decline. I mean, even the people who are preaching these kind of ideologies right now even openly states that we are in a state of decline. You know what I mean? And I was listening the other day. I forgot who said it, but they were talking about our infrastructure like it was just so much better. You know what I mean? And it's not. Like, you know what I mean? There's nothing good that's been done in the last well,
50 odd years.
50 odd years, I'd say. Yeah, when it comes to our infrastructure here in the United States, you know what I mean? Bridges are falling, dude. There's deaths because of bridges collapsing. You know what I mean? Yeah, and it's a serious issue. So, and you talk about freaking Michigan. You know what I mean? Look at Detroit. You know, and Detroit was our manufacturing capital of the United States, and it's just pathetic now. You know what I mean? It really is.
But this is I know this is an arguable point, but the entire tariff argument could aid in resolving some of this, getting jobs back into the US.
I was looking at the external revenue service idea that came out, and I was talking to you about it before. I don't know if it was on this show or if it was on my tomorrow's show, but in a previous episode. But I did look at it, and I mean it looks pretty legit, to be honest, because that was the way the United States used to get their revenue to support their federal government. You know what I mean?
Mm.
They did it off of tariffs from exports and stuff like that, and then they came along with the New Deal,
Mm.
where they thought that it was appropriate to uh, tax our citizens for working and for our labor and stuff, which was completely uncalled for. Like that was just something that was constitutionally illegal. You know what I mean? So that's why they created the Internal Revenue Service. And they made it a non-governmental organization with plenary powers that were given to them by Congress. Because see, Congress can't do it themselves. All right. And the executive branch can't do it themselves because they're not allowed to do that when it comes to taxes. All right. Now they can set plenary powers for the IRS to go out and collect taxes, but they can't do that themselves. You know what I'm saying? They can set tax rates and things of that nature, but they're not allowed to collect them, which is really weird. I found out something too when it came to the NSA the other day that I mentioned to you. Like they have the NSA, which can create a program that can detect foreign attacks on the internet, right? But they can't actually have a department that retaliates and attacks back. You know what I mean? So they set up another branch of government that can legally do it. You know what I mean? Because they aren't the NSA. The NSA doesn't have
Okay.
that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. But that's only the NSA is only related to nationals. Oh, in nationals, could it not be done by the CIA?
No. Dude, being honest, I don't even know if the CIA is legitimate. To be honest, that could
I
be.
mean, technically, on a legal principle, couldn't it be done by the CIA?
Well, I mean, that's what I'm trying to say. Like, you see, the only true form of legal in the United States is the Constitution, the constitutional law. Okay, and I really don't know for sure if the CIA falls into that category as being constitutionally legal. You know what I mean? To be honest, it just that's something later on I need to discuss
That's
or
an
need to.
interesting point. Yeah.
I've never really taken a hard look at it. So now we are at 3 hours and 22 minutes. We've got 7 minutes to go. I actually haven't even gotten to.
I was just looking at your final point here.
My final
Yeah,
point.
we can continue this one next week, I think.
Now this one is actually good too, and we can get to technocracy because that's where we start talking.
Because that is extremely relevant at the present moment.
Yeah, well, all of it. I mean, like this
Yeah,
last
yeah.
part that we were talking about really is important too. I didn't think we would even be bringing up this kind of conversation until we had this conversation, to be honest with you. You know what I mean? And it's good. I think it is. But this next time when we come back, we will talk about technocracy, and that's going to be good too. And I'll expand on that and bring more information in with it because we'll have to make it into a full
Yeah, I think. Well, I think there was sufficient material, or sufficient argument to make it an entire episode in itself.
Well, yeah, it is pretty. It is pretty big, to be honest with you. But I don't know. Maybe I should always be putting this stuff together, to be honest with you, because this is what I do. You know what I mean? And I mean, I would love to have these talking points set up. Now, the first season, just so you know, I've put together um, an article, a few articles with some of the episodes we did that I'm going to use narration for rather than having discussions. So that because we've already been over it in the last season, you know what I'm saying,
Mm.
with England. So what I did is I made it into an article, and then I'm going to use a narrator to let the narrator tell the story. You know what I mean? And then put it on my. And that's going to be on my other channel, Earth, so that you know. And I think the first one may have already came out. I'm not sure, but I'm putting all the other ones out that pertains to England and all of the crazy stuff that you English people did in history pertaining to your horrible, dastardly deeds on a world scale.
You mean bringing democracy and justice to the world?
Yeah, and all the time you guys were baking bread, dude. Like it just blows my mind. Like all the time you're baking bread, and like English people are.
Oh yeah, don't forget the pies as well,
Well, dude, pies
and
are
beer,
bread.
and beer.
Well, no,
Always
beer.
and bread.
Yeah. But you know, I mean, pies are kind of a part of the whole bread thing. You can't have pie without or bread with. Well, you can't have pie. I don't know. That's tough. That's tough when it comes to the English. Can you have pie without bread?
Yeah, I often eat pies without needing bread.
How about bread without pie? Can you have
Yeah,
bread?
yeah. I have a lot of I live on sandwiches, in fact.
Okay. Just double checking, man. I want to make sure that. So before we get off here, man, tell everybody how they can get in touch with you, Mr. Edward.
Okay, I'm opening up a new pie and bread sandwich shop. No, you can find me on minds.com under the username Medworthy.
Okay, and you can find me on Kick, Twitch, YouTube, D Live, and on Rumble. Now, I usually go by Infamous. Roger Hanson at Infamous 1973 on Rumble. On Twitch, you can find me at Infamous 1969, and on Kick, you can find me at Roger_Hanson. Now, on YouTube, we're being broadcasted on my channel there called The Praetorian at The Praetorian 5222. And on D Live, of course, you can find me at Roger_Hanson as well. Now, I do want to say something that pertains to my socials. I actually am on Element. You can find me there at Live with Roger Hanson. Me and Mr. Robot, as well as Mark Edworthy, can be found on there. I do participate on teams, even though I don't like teams. You can find me at Live with Roger Hanson and Roger's Realtime Talkshow event on Teams. Now, not D Live, but on Discord, you can find me there at the Wonderful World of Weirdness. and gaming with Infamous, but that doesn't really pertain to what we're doing now. So if you guys want to get in touch with me on there about strange, unusual, and bizarre things, or about video gaming, you can. But trust me, that's what that's about. That's not about politics. So now, with that being said, I'd like to say, please like, subscribe, share, make comments down in the comment section as well as in chat. Comment section is important. I'm sick as a dog and I'm still saying that, guys. That's how important it is, okay? So reach out, make comments. Just don't be a dick, you know what I mean? Respect what everybody says, you know, and don't get in no big arguments in my comment section, because that's just not cool. You know what I mean? If you can't have a conversation in the comment sections, then that kind of reflects on how you have conversations with people in real life. You know what I mean? Well, maybe not, because a lot of people like to vent on the internet. What do you think, Mark?
As we was talking about that earlier, just show some mutual respect.
Right. And with that, I will go ahead and end the show. I just wanted to come up with a lot of crazy bullshit so that I can make 3 hour and 30 minutes on the stream. So, did I do good job, Mark?
Uh,
Did I do good?
Yeah. So.
Okay.
So.
I will talk to you guys later. Hope you enjoyed, and we'll see you later.